Welcome back.
Welcome.
It's been a week.
What's going on?
Well, I'll start with the exciting news first.
Okay. What's the good news?
So the good news is that we have successfully onboarded 2 really amazing agents onto the team.
Yep.
And that was really awesome because it is something that we're having more of an emphasis on with having more experienced agents on the team. So super exciting to have that start to come together. But just frustrated with technical difficulties with the podcast. And we're in the middle of trying to troubleshoot a episode on. And among other things that I won't get into detail, but it's caused us to kind of bump heads a little bit when having
just a bit.
Having to do with our leadership styles, which is funny because that's exactly what we're talking about today.
We're going to be talking about leadership.
But first, let me ask you how you're doing.
I'm okay. I don't think we've said this on the podcast yet, but we are actually in the middle of remodeling our house because we're planning to put it on the market. And so we're kind of going through what most of our clients go through if, they take our advice and do a little remodeling beforehand. So this is something that is it's been fun to see, but we have a lot of people at our house unexpectedly this last weekend. It was like a mix-up on our end, and it was like, hey, by the way, Sunday night, there's going to be some people showing up Monday morning, and it was kind of a oh shit moment. So I quickly got on my toes and cleared out the entire downstairs and consolidated into one room in the garage. And we had the floors kind of redone. It's been busy to say the least amongst everything else we have going on.
For sure. And all by design.
All by design. It's a chaotic,
we put this on ourselves.
Beautiful thing.
It is. But I also wanted to say that with the house stuff and with onboarding, I was really looking forward to just an R&R day. And I had that yesterday. I felt like such a true housewife yesterday because it was no one at the house, which I was kind of already thinking going to be dealing with a lot of noise, but no one was at the house working on it yesterday. I had already prepped.
That wasn't by design. It just happened.
It just happened that way. And I prepped you about me having this day. And I was able to get caught up on just so many things like laundry, and that just feels never ending, and doing a little bit of meal prepping, which we did talk a little bit about that on our last episode.
Yeah.
But so we just haven't had time to really we went to the store, but we haven't had the time to actually get the food together and make it all up. So was able to do that yesterday. It was really, really nice. And so coming into today, there's been some hiccups, I want to say. Why don't we just dive right in?
Let's do it. So today's topic, we thought it would be amazing. Again, our topics are always going to be along the lines of entrepreneurship and how all these different topics kind of come into play and focus with that topic. So today's topic is leadership and styles, and how our leadership styles have kind of evolved over the years.
For sure. I think your leadership evolution is really interesting.
It is.
Why don't you kind of walk us through what that's been like?
Yeah, going from really having zero confidence in the space to now leading a team of, between 15 and 19 agents at any given time. It's been definitely something that if you asked me 12 years ago, do you think that you can do this? I would say there's no way. There's just no way at all. And so definitely has been a complete 180 through experience.
What was your initial leadership style like?
I think my initial leadership style was I would always wanted to just tell people the mistakes that I made so that they didn't have to make them. For instance, all of the mistakes I made were just had to be compounded over time, and I made them constantly until I finally learned, and that's really the best way to learn. But I would always try with newer agents on our team, try to tell them, do it this way because this is going to be the best way for you to do it. And I would even try to justify why, but it just never really clicked, or it took much more time to click. And so I definitely since have adapted quite a bit to now, instead of telling, I'm trying to get them to realize and ask, right? So
Right.
from tell to ask, it's almost like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie Inception, but the person has to come up with the idea or the solution themselves in order for it to be more impactful.
For sure. You're a natural problem solver. Even when I come to you with anything, sometimes I am just wanting to vent and you're
Let me solve it for you.
quickly to offer
I got you.
solutions. Right. Yes. And so I could definitely see that in your earlier leadership style of just, I have this figured out, so you don't have to. And I think really having other people buy into it, I think helps as well, and trying to find a solution.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, when you have success, people are already drawn to you. And so they trust you to get them to where they need to go regardless. But I can say confidently that the tell mentality, it will get them there, but it'll be longer and longer. I think the ask mentality of leadership is just something that's going to kind of fast track.
The ask mentality.
Yeah,
Tell me a little bit more about
for
that.
sure, for sure. So let's say a real estate agent has had a long week. They've made, let's just say, 500 calls, and they've had 20 conversations. At the end of the week, having them listen to the calls and tell mentality would be like, do you see how you did this, this, and this? You should do it this way. That would be a tell mentality instead of let's listen to this call together. And when I hear something saying, what do you think you could have done differently? Or what do you think approach wise you could have changed in order to make it a more effective call?
So what I'm hearing is curiosity and exploring on their end.
For sure. And there's a certain degree of coaching that has to occur before this, a bit of telling,
Right.
so that they understand. But at a certain point, if you're just constantly telling, then there's going to be no absorbing, the knowledge.
Backtracking, before you started the team, did you have any leadership experience?
I didn't. I was an employee in several locations, and I always do remember feeling like the leadership was very lackluster. There was no leadership. So I don't know. I don't feel like outside of like sports teams growing up, there was some good coaches and leadership there, but there wasn't like a great example for me. But how about you? Because I know you come from the corporate world. So I imagine things are a little more structured over there.
For sure. I will say this is the most confident I've been in forever. And yeah, it is amazing to be able to say that, because I feel in my early career, I pretty much started early on in my career, like 18, pretty much. I didn't have the college experience, so I just kind of went right into the workforce. And my managers did see potential in me. So it wasn't a lot of me saying, hey, give me that promotion, or hey, I want this. It was like they saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself, and they kind of helped put me there.
I'm curious when you say that, like, what do you think, like, if you had to guess, what do you think they did see in you?
Discipline with showing up, being reliable, having a positive attitude. I think just being a good person.
Giving an 18-year-old to show up on time on an everyday basis, that's like a miracle in itself. So.
Yeah, and I'm not here to brag about how, good of a person I am, but I will say that I was determined. Like, I wanted to move out at an early age. Like, I got my own place at 19, and so I needed to have a stable job in order to do that. And so there wasn't a question of, moving from job to job to job. Like, I was always at a job for at least more than 5 years, but that came with a lot of insecurities as well when I was placed in managerial positions.
When was your first managerial position?
23.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was 23 and I was managing a sales and service team. And I wasn't the youngest one, but I definitely felt like the youngest manager. And I just remember when it hit me, I had to talk to someone about their performance. And back in that time, it was all about results, results, results. It wasn't so much about the activities that you were doing. So like, it didn't matter what you did yesterday or how good you did yesterday. It was about like, what are you doing today? Like,
Yeah.
I need you to focus today
Right.
on hitting this amount of, numbers. And I was talking with someone who was the opposite sex, who was older, who graduated from college. And I could just feel their energy towards me was like, like, who are you to be telling me anything?
Yeah.
I have so much more experience than you. Like, why do I have to listen to you? They didn't say that, but I
You felt
it.
Yeah.
I definitely felt it.
Sometimes you don't have to say those sort of things, that they come through energy wise.
Right. And so that also had me realize that I, it was great to have that managerial experience, but at the same time, it was like, I don't want to help people that don't want to be helped. Like, this
Yeah.
guy doesn't want my help. What am I doing, like exerting my energy on someone that doesn't want any help?
And this goes back to our discussion about jobs, right?
Right.
People feel like they're going to show up to the job because they want to get the paycheck, but ultimately they don't really want to be there.
Yes. And so I've had that journey of, I was at different branches. I worked at a bank. So I was at different branches working with a lot of different personalities.
Can you go back on that real quick though, because I'm curious, like if someone is out there and they are in that position or feel like that, and we'll get to kind of where you are now, but how did you handle it? And I guess, was there anything you would change about how you did handle it if it were to be today?
How I handled it was I did what I had to do and I didn't think about it again because I was insecure. And the more that I thought about that insecurity was bringing me shame and like embarrassment. So at that time, I didn't have feelings. And I think that's probably what
You were
people,
numb.
why people saw that in me is because I wasn't complaining about anything. And then while at the same time, I wasn't really celebrating a whole lot either. I was just like going with the flow. But what I would do differently now is I would reflect on that conversation and the things that I would bring up in me, and I would confront that. Back then, I did not do any confronting. I just,
Plow through.
la la la. What the day is going to bring today, who knows?
Just keep on moving.
Just keep on moving.
Keep doing your job because I got to get out of my house.
Exactly. I didn't have a huge sense of identity, I will say.
Okay.
And I think that's why I feel the most confident right now, is because I feel like I know myself the best.
Yeah.
Where before it was, you're still figuring yourself out. And so being in those leadership positions at that age, it's tough when you don't really know yourself.
Yeah. Well, so you did have some success there and then moved on to a couple other leadership roles, or?
Yeah. So there was like 2 levels of manager. So I moved up to the second level and I went into like a few different branches. And then kind of when I realized that I want to help people that don't want to be helped, I was like, I got to get out of this environment. And I knew that stability was still very important to me. And I wanted to work for a very like reputable company that I knew was going to be thriving. And so that's when I kind of pivoted and worked at Cedars-Sinai. And I was on a team supporting a senior level executive. So it was very different, but it was also very demanding. It pretty much was that until kind of coming now to the team.
Yeah. And now our two styles have had to be kind of like meshed over time, but it was not so much this. It was a lot of,
And this happens still.
It does.
Like
and for those who just listening, we're clashing our fists together. So, yeah, it's been a journey being business partners for the last 2 years, and building this business together. And I think we've navigated our own leadership styles.
Yes.
And kind of have come together to join and make a baby.
Our third baby. How would you say our dynamic started, if you could describe it?
So our dynamic starting to work together, it was very much so you coming in and looking at how we were operating and kind of like asking logical questions of like, so how do you stay organized? So when does this meeting occur? Is it on a regular basis? And I think out of the gate, I had an insecurity about, a lot of the things that were wrong with the business. So there was just a natural like defense mode of like, well, sometimes it doesn't need to happen. And you would like continue to be like, okay, like, why wouldn't it need to happen on a regular basis?
Right.
And like the more you talk, the more I was like, yeah, this is making a lot of sense. Like it does make sense to have a meeting every week and to have actual things to talk about on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that original dynamic was like me being very talented in what I do and getting by on the talent, but not having much structure. And so that was kind of like the initial, and what would you say?
Yeah. I would say that we had a common goal of expanding the team, right? And making it something amazing. And we always would go back to that whenever we would clash. But it was a place where we didn't embrace each other's strengths. And we kind of...
Yeah. Or understand each other's strengths.
Right. And I think I would just be very irritated about why you would do something this way when I clearly would not do it that way. And we've come a long way, but it's helped in making decisions in a more balanced way.
For sure.
And not just, hey, this is amazing, let's do that. It's like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, let's see if this makes sense,
Yeah, I think there was so much implementation going on in the early days of us combining our leadership skills that there wasn't so much focus on future projects, right. But we are finally in a place where I feel like we have a great rhythm. We have a lot of infrastructure in place. And so now we're just trying to like build. And I think one of the key elements that, leadership wise, that even just this week has really hit me is I can't have the shiny object syndrome, which, and if for those of you who don't know, the shiny object syndrome is you can be doing amazing in business and then you go to like a seminar or someone on the internet is talking about how they're making a killing selling life insurance and you're like, oh, dang, I want to get some of that. And it takes you away from the path that you're currently on. And, if you have 4 or 5 prongs in a different road that you're going, it's going to be really hard to get to your destination. But if there's just 2 roads, you're probably going to make it. So really now focusing on what we call our rocks, and our rocks are quarterly projects, things that are super important to us, a agenda that we would like to get across or a project that we would like to implement into the team. And so your rocks are super important because if you know why it's important to you and you've already established that I'm going to spend the whole quarter on it, everything else that comes into play, you can quickly look and say, does this support our long-term goals?
Yeah, that's really important.
And is it going to take me off track if I chase this?
And that's partially why we were like bumping heads a bit, is because there was a shiny object, and
oh yeah,
for you,
there always is.
Yes, and I was thinking, there's no way, like, there's no way we can do this. And I was actually I think this helped. Like, another way to think about it is growing pains.
Growing pains, for sure.
And it just allows us to give ourselves grace that as we're continuing to scale, we are going to have growing pains, right? And it's normal. Like, kids have growing pains. We all have growing pains. So part of the growing pains for us is continue to cultivate each other's strengths and also being each other's anchor when we need that.
It's going back to another podcast that we had earlier, was don't turn on me.
Yeah.
In business and in personal, don't turn on me.
Right.
We have the same goal.
Yeah. Well, so it was actually really refreshing because after this past week, there was something that you really wanted to go after. And I pretty much kind of had to shut it down.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know that I was completely right. It just felt right. And the next morning, you pretty much said, thank you so much for not
Enabling me.
yes, basically. And it was just refreshing because not that I was looking for that, from you, but it was just, okay, I have value in my way of thinking and I'm here to offer it. And at the end of the day, like, we're all going to make our own choices, but that's why we have our support system.
Right. And you talked about growing pains earlier, and the reason why I can confidently say to you, like, thank you for putting me back where my mind and my focus where it should be, is because there have been times where I've been like, I'm just going to do it anyway. And then
yes,
I do it and I'm like, oh man, that didn't turn out how I envisioned. And so again, going back to like our focus, our rocks, like having that and establishing what that is great, because even though I knew what it was, at that moment, I'm like, let me just drop everything and go with this. But having that sobering reminder that, no, this is what we talked about. This is what we're doing, and that's where leadership comes in many forms.
definitely. And it's not always the loudest, right?
It can be. Honestly, yeah, I actually don't enjoy the loudest. When the room is loud, I am just kind of backing away, and I'm not going to say anything because it's not going to be heard.
Right. I feel confident when I am sharing my feedback now. Before, when I had just joined the team, it was a lot of me sharing my feedback, and then you would just maybe dismiss it, and not on purpose, but just not take it into consideration. And then I did feel like, well, why am I giving my energy if it's not really going to be taken in? And now we're definitely at a place where we've learned each other's styles and how important each other's styles are to like the overall goal.
Yeah.
And that's why I do feel when I feel strongly about something, I will, take initiative and be like, hey, something needs to be done here.
Yeah. And I think it goes to respect, because, I've been doing real estate now for 11, 12 years and running the team for 5 years. And so when you're coming in, again, I had a lot of ego and a lot of like, well, you haven't really done this. And
Yes.
so
And
now,
that's true. I have.
right. And look, there were certain times where like, I was probably in the right to be like, no, this is kind of how we're doing things.
Right.
But I've seen myself be completely wrong many times. So it was easy to be like, okay, Brandy has said these things and 89% of the time it's been right. So I'm going to just go with the averages here and take your lead on this in particular.
And I would say when I was joining the team, I had insecurities about what the perception would be.
For sure.
And that did hold me back from really fully owning it.
Yeah.
And being myself. And yeah, it's something that I had to work on, because I felt like it was all me, right? Like all in my head.
The imposter syndrome.
The imposter syndrome, like, who are you to come in and like try and change anything? And our dynamic is unique because we're married. Sure. So there's just that natural insecurity, right?
Right.
What was that about?
Wait, we are?
Oh, I thought you were looking at the time.
No. How long we've been married now?
Yeah. Too long.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you feel like our leadership styles have shaped the team?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of leaders, especially in the real estate world, that are, like we talked about earlier. Not so many of them are also show, right? Because there's the ask and then there's the show, like leading by example. And so I think it was very important for me, and it still is very important for me, that I remain sharp and can be able to still have my finger on the pulse of the market and feel like, hey, whatever scenario one of our agents is facing, I can give sound advice, because either A, I've been there, or I have enough experience to basically say, well, this is what I would do in this situation.
Yeah.
And that's important to me, because if at some point in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm not doing any sort of business myself and not interacting with clients myself, then it can be a real possibility that the tactics and the things that I've used to move my business forward are a thing of the past. And so I think leading by example, still doing calls, still going on appointments,
Yeah.
teaching.
And you collaborate a lot with teammates
Absolutely.
too. You're not, I know it all, and let me just give you the solutions, like you said. Let me tell you, you're really, hey, let's brainstorm this. And then you kind of feed off of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my favorite, honestly, like the creativity aspect of like taking something that nobody's doing in the space and like brainstorming, how can we be different? How can we come up with an idea to find another avenue for business? Like that's the stuff that I'm like, that's also shiny object syndrome. So
gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, have to be.
But it's a good problem to have.
It can be, yeah.
For me, I think what I really pride myself on with the team is continuing to build the culture and the diversity.
Yeah.
Like I love the diversity on the team, and we're just, they're good people.
Yeah.
Right. And last year we had an intention to bring on new agents, and we were very happy with who we brought on. And this year we're getting even more granular with like who we're bringing on, that we're not just going to be bringing anyone on because they want to be on the team. So we want to definitely still strive to operate at that high level while also being ingrained with the collaborative culture and the good vibes.
Yeah, the good vibes is where it's at. I mean, if you've ever been in a workplace or, a team where there's negative energy, it just doesn't go well. And it's just uneasy for everyone, So
I would say if you're a leader yourself and you are looking to expand your team or you're hiring someone, if this person does not have a positive attitude, it really doesn't matter how smart they are, like how much they can get done for you, like tangibly, like that, of course, is important for the short term. But in the long term, we really, really are looking to be able to grow this with everyone.
Yeah.
Right. And not just have someone that's kind of like teetering on positivity.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think if you were to get 10 people into a room and they were all thinking positively and about what they can do and what they can create together, it would be amazing to see, a 1 hour brainstorm and all the ideas they came up with. And if you were to take those different group, 10 people that were all negative or indifferent, I guarantee their piece of paper would probably be like this big.
Yeah.
It's just all about passion and then feeling that energy like rippling throughout the organization.
Yeah. And I think the team is definitely, and the people that we're meeting with, they're drawn to our sincerity.
Yeah.
And our professionalism. And I'm wondering for you, given that we're in a good spot, has there been like a catalyst moment that you thought to yourself like, wow, we've built something special here?
Yeah, I think I'm constantly having that these days, going on more and more meetings where we're talking with agents that are looking to join our team, and they'll tell us, or they'll tell me, sometimes I meet with them before meeting with you, and they'll say, we've met with this team and we've met with that team and we've met with this big time agent. And by the time we're done with our presentation, a lot of time it's like, I want to join your team.
Right.
And there's that like imposter syndrome moment, like as they're explaining all of the teams that they've met with.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh, wow, well, you've met with all of them, do you really want to join us?
Right.
And then by the time they're done, like talking with us, they're like, whoa, yeah, no, I want to join this team.
Yeah.
And I think too, our dynamic in those discussions with agents has just drawn a lot of good energy. And so I think that's kind of been the moments I've been having more and more and more. And really, I can't think of the last time we met with someone where they're like, no, I'm good, you know?
Right. That's one of my favorite parts, is meeting with people that seem like they'd be a good fit, whether that's an agent or an employee. And for me, I'm less about, when interviewing people, I'm less about technicality and more about, can we have a genuine conversation? Can I be comfortable with you? Because
Yeah.
we're going to be doing a lot of collaboration. And I want to know, like, what do you like to do when you're not in real estate? Like,
Yeah.
that's going to tell me so much. And yeah, just embracing the diversity as well, of like, okay, not everyone has to be the same and everyone has their own thing going on. And that's also one of the things that we love, is we don't really like to say like our agents, it's like we're all partners, right?
We're all partners. Yeah.
And like,
It's a
given this
partnership.
mutual agreement, this mutual respect that we all have for each other, we're helping you with your success, you're helping with us with our success. You know, we're all
Yeah.
collaborating to one common goal.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side of that, you know, when it works, the partnership is amazing. And when it doesn't work, leadership is still coming into play at that point, because, you know, we're having a discussion about, listen, we brought you on because we wanted to help you with your goals, and you've made a commitment to your goals, and we've made a commitment on our end to hold you accountable to those goals. And so if we're not holding you accountable, and then you are not hitting your goals, or we are holding you accountable and you're still not pressing to get it done, then we just have to have a discussion about that. And that's, for me, that was a very difficult conversation. I remember the first time, the second time, but the more I have those conversations, the more I'm convinced that whatever the outcome is, it's the right thing for both parties.
Yeah, and maybe that can be a part two of this, is how to have difficult conversations, because
I like that.
That not only happens within our team, but also it happens with clients.
Yeah.
Also, it may happen with family members, friends. It's just an important skill to be able to know how to have those difficult conversations and not shy away from it. But like you just said, it's usually best for both parties to have those conversations. So part two on that.
Yes. Stay tuned.
So what other lessons have you learned from sort of like your leadership styles, given our leadership styles?
For sure. I think just going back to on the entrepreneurial topic, you just got to jump. There's been so many times where I've waited to kind of make big decisions or pull the trigger on something to be implemented into the business. And once I did it, it was like, gosh, I should have done this years ago.
What do you mean exactly?
Yeah, I would just say like a certain technology that we've been meaning to implement that I've heard great things about, or, you know, and not even on that front of spending money, but just like taking more time to think about what we could be doing at a higher level, and like having those sessions of audit sessions of like, okay, we are doing it this way. Have we ever really sat down to think about how we could be doing it better?
Yes.
So implementation. And I think that's one of the big things that now we're putting a big emphasis on, is like going back to and asking our clients, asking our teammates, how are we doing?
Right. Yeah, I love that. Asking for the feedback. And outsourcing has been a huge lesson for us. Within the team, we've outsourced some marketing, we've outsourced being able to create appointments. And on the personal front, I think, can we just give a minute to those that are fully in with whatever career they're in, but also have the family that is relying on you to show up? And I definitely carry this mental burden, I feel.
Yeah, you do.
I do. Yeah.
You do.
Because we've talked, and it's like, I'm asking him, like, I got to do like all these 5 things at home. Like, do you ever think about that? And he's like, no, I don't.
Not once.
So it's like a blessing that he doesn't have to think about that, but someone's got to do it. And honestly, I just am the type that how my home is, it's like a sanctuary to me. So yeah. It's also very important to me that I come home to a it doesn't have to be super clean, but just kind of it can be like organized chaos, if you will, but where it feels good.
Yeah.
That's important to me.
It's important to me because it is important to you. And so like, if I'm ever trying to be proactive with you and get things done, then I would never stop you from doing those things.
Yeah.
It doesn't end up well.
No, it doesn't.
You can't focus until those things are done.
Another big lesson in leadership is authenticity. And I think that just goes to what I was saying about feeling confident, is because I know myself, I know my values, and I strive to stay true to that.
Yeah.
And I know that that's going to bleed into the team, and I don't need to be someone else when I'm here.
Right. And something that we did when we first came together, our coach advised us to, and, you know, it's been a little while, so I think we'll be redoing this very soon. It's just establishing core values, like what is important to us, what does our team represent, and what is our overall why for the team. And so I think those things, having them established so that you could always go back and say, like, does this feel out of alignment with these core values? You know? And it just makes it easy to make a decision from there.
It's like having a moral compass, right?
Yeah, or a compass for your organization. Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed this podcast on leadership, and we'd love to hear about your leadership styles. So you can drop it down below in the comments or on our Instagram. Follow us at Justin Borges, LA Realtor.
Or at the Borges Podcast.
At the Borges Podcast.
Yeah. But we'd love to know where you're listening or watching. So if you can, you know, maybe share it on your story, tag us. We'd love to see it. Yep. So we will catch you guys all next time.
See ya.